Screonk, a Godzilla movie marathon where we're stomping through Godzilla's filmography. I'm Derek, and I've seen all the Godzilla movies.
And I'm Doug, and I've seen 2 Frankenstein movies.
Yay!
And half of the Godzilla movies.
Yeah, and we're talking about the sorta-kinda sequel to Frankenstein versus Baragon. And the third and final co-production that was part of the American-Japanese collaboration between Toho and UPA.
Okay.
Which is The War of the Gargantuas, also known as Frankenstein no Kaiju, Sanda and Gaira, which translates to Frankenstein's Monsters, Sanda and Gaira.
Oh.
Was released in Japan on July 31st, 1966, directed by Ishirō Honda, with director of special effects Eiji Tsuburaya, with a screenplay by Takeshi Kimura and Ishirō Honda, and a story by Ruben Berkovich, produced by Tomoyuki Tanaka, Henry Saperstein, Ruben Berkovich, and Kenshiro Tsunoda, with a score by Akira Ifukube. All of those names are from like the Frankenstein versus Baragon movie, basically.
Yeah.
We'd like to take a quick moment to thank our spectacular patrons, Bo, Carl, Katie, Jason, Zoe, James, Keith, Cody, Toby, Hamish, Troidal Power, Blake, Thorn of Camor, Jace, Jojack, David, and Chelsea. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hadn't seen this movie before.
Me neither.
You hadn't seen this movie before. I know this is a cult favorite. A lot of people really like this movie. Mm-hmm. What do you think about it?
Okay, I have to tell you, I've watched this movie twice now because this movie is like bizarrely difficult to find in Japanese with full English subtitles. And I say it that way because you can find it in Japanese with some English subtitles, but the version you can find with English subtitles, like not everything is subtitled, which makes it kind of pointless for those of us who only speak English. So, but I was like determined. I was like, if I have the Japanese audio and I have English subtitles from all the other places it's available, I can figure this out. So the first time I watched it, I did watch it in Japanese with the English subtitles. I just had one of my monitors playing the movie with the Japanese audio and the other monitor playing it muted with the English subtitles. So I just watched it side by side and synced it up.
I love that you went above and beyond, but that's psychotic. Like,
it is, but I was so determined. I was so determined. So this is all context for what I'm about to say, because I watched it the first time and was sort of like, I don't really know if this one is necessarily for me. It wasn't one that I was like super excited to watch.
Okay.
And I walked away from it being like, that's fine. We'll talk about it and it'll be fine. But then I did get curious about the English audio, and I knew that you had watched it with the English audio. So I was like, well, it might be beneficial for us to at least have
one
watched
of the English audios.
Sure. But I think I watched the same one you did at the very least.
Okay.
And so I was like, and it probably will be beneficial if we've watched at least one of the same versions. So I then watched it again today in English. And I have to say, this is one that the more I think about and the more I kind of like break it into parts and consider those specific parts, like the more I like it. Like I get why people like this movie. And I think I was prepared after one watch to come in here and be like, it's fine. I don't know that I need to watch this one again. I think I genuinely like this movie. It has some massive flaws, but I think I do overall like this movie. Because at first I was like, why don't I like this movie? Because it's boring? Well, it's not boring. Is it bad? It's not bad. Is it like lacking in themes? Well, not really. Like every time I asked a question of like why I didn't like it, I could come up with at least some portion of why that wasn't entirely true.
Okay, this will be fun because you're much higher on it than I am.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you to convince me why I'm wrong and should be more into it.
I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, I did not watch in Japanese. I just watched I watched what is streaming on Max currently, which is the English dub, specifically the Hong Kong dub that Toho did, which the advantage of that dub is that it is just like the uncut Japanese version, just with English dubbers all over it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not an amazing dub sound quality wise.
Ooh, baby.
I don't really understand.
Sure isn't.
Were they recording in someone's living room with like some toy microphone? It's weird how bad quality.
It's rough.
That the dub like audio quality is.
Right.
Like,
It's not even like the actors
not the acting.
suck.
The acting
the audio quality is bad.
Fine. The acting is like what I expect from that. The audio quality is real rough, really strange. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
But then there's also, this is just useful context for how we talk about some of this stuff. But there's also another cut that probably a lot of people who grew up with this movie are more familiar with, which is like the UPA English dub that they did in 1970. So like 3 years later, that they did re-edit the movie, and we'll talk about it. There's like alternate takes and things like that are for that cut. And some significant differences that I'll get into.
Ooh, I'm really excited to hear about that.
So there are people that grew up with this movie that are like probably more familiar with that version of it rather than, what we watched, which was like the Japanese version.
Yeah.
But Japanese people obviously would be more familiar with this version. So
yeah.
But like story wise, it's all the same. It's just some interesting changes they make that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to talk about it because I think maybe you'll enlighten me a little bit. Because I think I went into this movie with sort of unfair expectations because I knew that this is a huge favorite for a lot of people, and it's a type of movie that is like referenced in a lot of things. Like a lot of filmmakers and places have looked to this movie for inspiration, and I think that. For a lot of people, it's like this is a movie that you watch when you're a kid, and it blows your mind if you haven't seen other kaiju movie before. And I think it was in heavy circulation, especially like in the 70s on TV. But when you've seen a lot of other kaiju movies, especially like the standalone ones, for me, it was sort of like, it's all stuff that I've like seen before, but better, Then, like you were saying, though, like then I think about it, I'm sort of like, yeah, but that aspect of it was really unique and interesting, and like that aspect of it is really cool. Like, there's broad ideas in it that I do really like. So I'm excited to think about it more and be. And maybe I hope that I'll come out of this feeling better about it, because, like I said, I know that this is like near and dear to a lot of people, and it didn't hit with me in the way that I was hoping that it. Based on how people talk about it.
It's interesting though, because we came in with very different sort of expectations, because I didn't know any of that, and I like wasn't excited to watch it. And a big part of that, I know we always go through, each one of these things more specifically, so I'll talk more specifically about it. But a big part of it was like I walked away from Frankenstein versus Baragon being like, that movie was fine. There are things I like about it, but it's ultimately like fine, And then I've seen these monsters before, and I think they're ugly. And so I like wasn't excited to watch this movie, because I was like, those are the monsters in this movie, and I'm going to have to look at them for the whole movie, which is like the worst reason to not be excited about a movie. But that's all I had to go on was it's a sequel to a movie that I'm not that enthusiastic about, and the monsters are kind of ugly. So it's part of it might be that my expectations were pretty low. I had no idea this was like a beloved one.
Oh, well, yeah, we'll get into some of that.
Cool.
Yeah, so like I said, this is sort of part of that ongoing Japanese-American collab with UPA. So that was, Invasion of Astro Monster, Frankenstein versus Baragon, and this. Those like the 3 UPA Toho collabs. This is the last one of those. Originally when this was greenlit, it was intended to be like an even more direct sequel to Frankenstein versus Baragon, like more explicitly than what we get in the movie. Okay. Even going so far as to have Nick Adams returning alongside Kumi Mizuno. Oh, I don't know if they were gonna if they originally were gonna reprise the same roles or not. I wouldn't be surprised given the weirdness of like how these characters are written to be like the same characters but different. But also, Toho's history has been that you just sort of, even if you have the same actors, they're playing different characters every movie. So I actually don't really know which it would have been, to be honest. Yeah. But either way, it would have been Nick Adams and Kumi Mizuno both returning. The idea was, to have dueling Frankenstein brothers, which is inspired by the tale Umihiko and Yamahiko, which translates to the Sea Boy and the Mountain Boy, which is like an ancient Japanese myth. Whoa. Basically. Yeah. And so that's the kernel of their idea, is that like there's this old Japanese myth of a sea boy and mountain boy. We're going to have a sea Frankenstein and a mountain Frankenstein. And that's where the idea for the movie kind of comes from.
That rules.
Yeah. It's cool.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's cool as hell. And like, that's, the rest of the story is sort of birthed from that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Neat.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the early titles are the Frankenstein Brothers, the 2 Frankensteins, Frankenstein versus Frankenstein. I fucking love that
would have been really funny. I do love the title Frankenstein's Monsters. Is it Sanda and Gaira, or the opposite?
Sanda versus Gaira.
Oh, versus Gaira. Got it. Okay. I do like that title. I think it's fun. But I mean, if you don't know the names yet, Frankenstein versus Frankenstein's kind of a perfect
Frankenstein
title.
versus Frankenstein is really funny. Yeah. Well, and I think they decided later on to give them names. Like I think for a while it was just going to be the mountain one and the sea one, and they were just both Frankensteins. You know,
they say the brown one and the green one often enough after they know their names, so that's no surprise.
True. Yeah. Frankenstein's Decisive Battle was another title option.
Oh.
Yeah. And then also just Frankenstein's Fight. So, you know, I just thought those were all funny because they're like fun sounding titles with the word Frankenstein in them.
Yeah.
But apparently it was Ishirō Honda that came out with the idea that he kind of wanted it to stand more on its own, even though this was initially commissioned as Frankenstein versus Baragon sequel. He was like, I kind of think that the story would be better if we didn't have heavy ties to that movie. Mm-hmm. And so he has a script credit on this movie, which he rarely does. Usually like he gets the director credit and like nothing else. And so the fact that he does get a script credit makes me believe that like, his major contribution to the script was probably rewriting it to eliminate references to the original movie, is my guess. And I think culturally, I think was also interesting because I do think that like this movie, like especially for Western culture, a lot of people know this movie, but don't know Frankenstein versus Baragon or Frankenstein Conquers the World necessarily. They know this one. And I think this is skipping ahead, obviously, but like, when UPA did their English dub in 1970 and recut it, part of the changes that they made were to cut out even further the connections to Frankenstein, to go even more down the road to just like making it a completely different movie to not related to it. So they don't reference Frankenstein in the dub, and they rename the creatures the Gargantuas. It's the green Gargantua and the brown Gargantua.
That makes a lot of sense.
Which is how the title War of the Gargantuas comes from in the international title. So Gargantuas are just sort of in that version of the movie, just their own sort of species that, you know, the scientists found, and they don't really reference that there was previously a Frankenstein monster that it was spawned from.
Whoa, that's wild.
Right. It's just, there is just a species of Gargantua the creatures that exist that they know about that these scientists were studying, essentially, which I think works better because I think the weird pseudo sequel aspect of the Japanese version is a little odd. And I think confusing when you're watching it.
I think some of the things I like about this movie rely a little bit on, I think some of the things I like about this movie would not exist if it just were the case that gargantuas existed and the scientists discovered them.
That's fair. That is fair. That's fair.
I think the fact that they raised one that they don't think exists is cool.
But yeah, while we're talking about it, there's other edits in that version of the UPA version where like there's like about 10 minutes or so of like alternate scenes and stuff like that and special effects shots. There's stuff where they add like, you know, your main white guy into more scenes that he previously wasn't in just to have him more, you know, more upfront. Which makes sense. They're trying to Americanize the movie essentially. Yeah. So, you know, so there's like basically 3 versions of this that you can watch if you want to.
Wow.
But the story is essentially the same. So like I said, Nick Adams is going to return. He was just unable to, I'm assuming, you know, your typical scheduling money stuff, right? He was initially replaced by Tab Hunter, who is another blonde beefcake American actor who's similar to Adams. But that fell through. He wasn't able to do it. So then he was replaced by Russ Tamblyn during pre-production. And if they originally were going to have the same characters of Frankenstein versus Baragon, this is probably the point where they're just sort of like, they're just going to all be new. Even Kumi Mizuno is going to be a different character by this point.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm looking at Tab Hunter, and they could have easily just had him be Nick Adams' character if they wanted to.
Yeah. But then once they go in the Russ Tamblyn direction, like it's such a different guy that like, why not just make it a different character, you know?
Yeah.
So the film shot incredibly quickly. The final draft of the script was done at the end of April. They shot principal photography in May and June, completed the special effects just a couple of weeks before it came out, which I know that Toho is a well-oiled machine, but that's still like crazy to me. And this is probably the first time that Honda and Toho had like real issues with the American co-production side of things. King Kong Escapes comes out the year after, so the Rose Reason stuff hasn't happened yet. And even then, I don't think it was like really on set like problems. It was just Rose Reason was just sort of an asshole and there was some tension, but he still like did his job and stuff. This is the case where like I said, for that alternate cut, it wasn't just that like UPA was using alternate scenes for their new dub or whatever. Like Saperstein was having Honda shoot a bunch of additional scenes and alternate takes. There's like at least like 9 or 10 scenes that were like staged and shot 2 completely different ways, so Saperstein would have an alternate version of it for the American cut. And like obviously that kind of stuff isn't abnormal where America like recuts the Japanese one when they import it, but what is sort of abnormal is asking the Toho crew to film new stuff for America rather than America just doing it for themselves. So like it literally just like doubled their work in some cases.
Right.
They'd shoot the whole scene and then be like, okay, now do this with like Russ Tamblyn front and center, now do it from a different angle or whatever, and then just like shoot the same scene all over again for everyone, just so America just have an alternate take.
That's so wild.
Yeah. Isn't it weird?
Especially because of how it comes to be. It's not like the director specifically was like, I'd like to see this 2 ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so wild. Huh.
Yeah. So I think that caused problems. Also, Russ Tamblyn was a huge fucking problem on set.
No, was he really?
He was a really massive problem on set. We'll talk about it more later because I've got a whole section on him. It's different than Rhodes. It's different than the Rhodes Reason section because Rhodes Reason is just like racist in the way he talks about it. Yeah. But he like did his job. Russ Tamblyn was just like problematic to have.
Oh boy. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. Not in a way that will like ruin him as a person or anything for you, but you'll lose respect for him as an actor.
I mean, I don't know him as a person.
Yeah. But we'll put a pin in that. That's going to be a whole, I got plenty of fun quotes to talk about him.
Okay.
But all of that is to say that it was not a fun production, it seems like, compared to many other productions, especially given how quickly they were churning this out. Having to deal with like on-set tension with America was not great. And I'm sure probably had something to do with this being the last movie that they did with UPA.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. The thing that I wanted to bring up here early that I thought was sort of interesting. Like I said, like this is one of the more popular like standalone kaiju movies in the West, oddly enough. So like there's like many famous instances of like famous actors and directors and stuff referencing this. Like Quentin Tarantino has said he based the Kill Bill Volume 2 fight between Uma Thurman and Daryl Hannah, like on War of the Gargantuas. He apparently showed them this movie and told them that he wanted it to be the War of the Blonde Gargantuas. Funny enough. Brad Pitt says this was the first movie he ever saw.
Wow.
Hajime Isayama, who was the creator of Attack on Titan, said that this movie was a major influence on him creating Attack on Titan.
Okay, that makes sense.
There's other things, but one of the most funny things that I found that didn't occur to me when I originally watched the show because I hadn't seen the movie yet. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated did a full episode homage to this movie in the episode Battle of the Mungunauts.
Whoa.
That not only has, a green and brown monster like fighting each other and then those are the monsters that they deal with, it also has a singer literally singing the song "The Words Get Stuck in My Throat" in that episode.
No way.
Verbatim. They got the rights to do that, I guess.
Wow.
And it gets even better because that song is then played in another episode. It's heard in the episode Dance of the Undead, which is the episode that has the ska band Zombies attacking, which we watched on our Patreon for an After Dark commentary years ago.
Incredible.
So we have heard that song before through Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated together on our podcast.
Mind blown. Holy crap.
The connections.
That's wild.
I never knew that because I'd never seen the movie. I didn't know that's what that song was from. Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
Now I really want to watch we've watched the Ska Zombie ones, but I really want to watch what do they call it? The Gigantonauts?
Battle of the Humungonauts. Yeah.
Humungonauts.
I mean, I've been way overdue for a Mystery Incorporated rewatch anyway, because there's also like there's so many like references to like really cool pop culture that show does that I don't think I would have got originally that I think I would get better now.
Yeah.
That I want to revisit it anyway. Like that's one of them. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
I just thought that was fun.
Yeah, that's super fun. Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, let's talk about our Frankenstein / Gargantuas.
Yeah.
And we can kind of talk about them together, Gaira and Sanda, because they're obviously the suits and everything are made the same way and everything.
Sure.
So Gaira is portrayed by Hiro Nakajima. Never heard of him. Godzilla. Obviously, he's in the role for obvious reasons because he's Hiro Nakajima. Sanda is played by Hiroshi Sekida. He would go on after this to be Ebirah, Mechanic-Kong, and then Godzilla himself for part of Son of Godzilla.
Oh.
But this was his first kaiju suitmation role.
Okay.
Because it was supposed to be Soichi Hirose. He'd already fought Hiro Nakajima in King Kong versus Godzilla, right? So it sort of makes sense for him to be fighting Nakajima again in the same way in another sort of ape-ish sort of suit, right?
Yeah.
Hirose declined because he'd gotten a part in another movie where he'd actually get to show his face. So he's like, I'm going to be acting as a person. I don't want to be in this ugly ass monster suit. So then they go to Sekida. And this gets to be his first kaiju role. And then he does, many kaiju roles after this.
Huh. That's so interesting because like I'm sure that like not every suit actor was specifically trying to eventually act face, like with like face out. I don't know what to call it. Like just with their own face. I'm sure there are people who just are suit actors. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that is interesting to think about. Like, no, sorry, I got a job where I get to show my face.
Yeah, acting with their whole ass face out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gaira's name comes from Kaira for the Japanese word for sea. Sanda's name comes from San, the Japanese word for mountain. So there you go.
Makes sense.
Told Narita designed the monsters. So the reason I mentioned this, he had done some special effects work on Godzilla, the original Godzilla Raids Again, and Rodan. So it's like we have intersected with his work before. I'm mentioning it here though because he is most famous for creating and designing the major characters and elements of the Ultra series, which includes Ultraman himself. He designed original. Created the original Ultraman character, and Ultra Q starts the same year as this movie. So he is sort of starting his most prolific work at the same time, roughly, as he's doing this movie, basically.
Wow.
Which I just think is cool.
Yeah. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's one thing the movie has, it's certainly like pedigree. Like that's one of the things that like, when you think about it, you're sort of like, I mean, the people who made this knew how to make it, like
for sure.
So, wow. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but damn. Yeah.
Some of the early concept art for these two, it's interesting because I think they were initially going to make them a little more distinct. Sanda was going to look like a ape Frankenstein kind of thing, but Gaira, I think some of the concept art leans even harder on the sea monster side of him, right? Like some versions of him are more like a merman or like creature from the Black Lagoon dude with like fins and like a fish head kind of vibe, like more clear like moss and scales rather than the hair, which I think is an interesting idea. And obviously I think they just land on suits that look more similar to each other, probably just for budget and everything.
They do, but one thing I like about the suits is that there are some distinct like design elements, and it's cool to see that they came from these initially much more different suits.
Yeah I do love the idea of like just a whole ass fish man in this movie though. Like I think that would have been really fucking cool.
That would have been cool.
Yeah They use facial casts for the mask, so they actually took casts of Nakajima and Sekida's faces for this. So they got like these nice form-fitting masks. Nakajima specifically said that he loved being able to wear a mask because not only did it just fit his face nicely because it was made out of a cast for him, but also like it's like one of the only times that he gets to like act with his eyes in any of these movies.
Yeah, you get to see their eyes.
Yeah, so like they get to actually be expressive in a way that they normally aren't. And Nakajima since said like refers to this as his favorite kaiju role next to Godzilla because of that,
that makes sense. I get it.
Yeah. The suits did not use wetsuits as their cores, even though they're in water a lot. They opted to not do that specifically because they felt like the rubber material might be too restricted to act in, because unlike like Godzilla and stuff, which are sort of lumbering creatures, like these dudes need to be able to fucking run and jump and tumble, right?
Yeah.
They want full on wrestling. So in lieu of like, protection and from water and things like that, they didn't want to go skin tight. They went more like they based these suits more on like boiler suit type garments, which are pretty loose fitting, and then just put skin and fur over that like loose fitting material, which is why the body shape for these guys are a little weird, right? Like they are kind of flabby almost because there's just a bunch of cloth sort of draped over them. But that meant that like they had a lot of flexibility and comfort, so they could, like I said, just fucking run at full speed wherever they wanted.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, they gave them football shoulder pads.
Oh, they sure
so they
did.
could sort of, emphasize that sort of strength that they have. They built a giant arm and hand prop that they could use for Gaira holding people, which that inspired them to use that for King Kong in Mechanic Kong and King Kong Escapes, which is the year after this. This is sort of the first time that they really figured out like doing big hand and integrating that with blue screen.
Honda was probably stoked about that, right? Because he's like a huge King Kong fan.
Yeah, I'm sure it's sort of like, okay, hey, we're doing King Kong Escapes next, so we can use this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nakajima handled the fight choreography, of course, took inspiration from professional wrestling. No surprise there. Mm-hmm. The roars Gaira's roars specifically are sped up and slightly altered King Kong roars from King Kong versus Godzilla. Sanda is that same roar, but just layered with Frankenstein's roars from Frankenstein versus Baragon.
I don't like the way they sound. I think it's painful, which is probably part of the point.
Yeah.
But they're sort of big humanoid giant creatures. I feel like they could yell or roar a little more than they like screech, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's haunting. It's haunting and creepy and weird.
Yeah.
What do you think of these guys?
Yeah.
These ugly fucking motherfuckers.
Look, here's the thing. I will say this. The art, like the official like poster art and stuff, I actually think I like less than the suits themselves, which like rarely happens.
Interesting.
Because I mean, the thing that's so ugly about them is they have these sort of like really like grotesque faces kind of that don't necessarily appeal to me, but the suits are very cool. I think the suits are actually very cool. I think as far as like humanoid giant suits that are, you know, I mean, what I think of when I see them, knowing context and stuff, is like, okay, well, we have Frankenstein from the last one, which was just like a guy with caveman makeup on and like caveman prosthetics and stuff, and like didn't love that. And like King Kong, which is especially, you know, from King Kong versus Godzilla, which was kind of a similar shape to these, but I didn't necessarily love the execution of how they did their fur and the face on that one and stuff. I think the texture of these and the way that they kind of look like scales, but also kind of look like fur. I think it's extremely cool. I think their proportions are very cool. I don't personally love the football shoulders, but I think it makes a lot of sense with what these creatures are supposed to be. It really truly is just kind of their faces. And I think when you're actually watching the movie and they're in action and they're expressive and they're, you know, trying to communicate with each other or they're responding to things, the ugly faces don't bother me that much anymore. I think maybe because they get to be expressive also. So I actually don't. I actually don't dislike these suits or these creature designs in a way that I thought I would. I actually kind of like them, and I think as a pair, it's cool that there's two of them, that they're colored. So there's the brown one and there's the green one. That they have distinct different characteristics. They don't just have the same face. There are different things, like their ears are slightly different from each other, their noses are very different from each other, how their teeth are different from each other. And I like that in general if there's going to be two of, quote, the same monster. But I also think it's really cool for the story based on the fact that one of these is created from the other and then adapts environmentally to a different sort of setting. Like I think it's a cool way to incorporate some of the story into the design and the design into the story.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, I mean, they're still like not my kind of kaiju. I'm not.
No, generally they wouldn't
never
be for me.
I'm never going to be a fan of kaiju that just look like people but like uglier. Like this is never going to be my thing. But I agree with you that they do. I think that they do a much better job than with the original Frankenstein. And the faces are really the thing that I still don't like about them. But the bodies I think work really well. I think that because it is like you were saying, like there's that sort of interesting enigmatic nature of like not knowing exactly what you're looking at. Like, am I looking at scales? Am I looking at hair? Am I looking at moss? Like, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
And I think it, like in a way that works. I think it's like it's good and it makes them feel a little more alien, but still like works for the environment that they're supposed to come from.
And unique from any other monsters we've talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes them immediately feel more complex and like detailed, even though, you know, these suits aren't that much more complicated than other ones necessarily are.
Yeah.
I think the hair on their head kind of bothers me because
Yeah.
I think that's a big problem that I have. It looks too much like a person's hair.
I don't like their hair. I mean, honestly, the big problem is just from the neck up, right? Like, I think their hair is ugly, but the hair is the one thing about the faces that I'm like, I get it, because they're supposed to be Frankensteins. It's the one remaining sort of inspiration from the sort of popular depiction of a Frankenstein's monster is these like flat heads with this like hair that's just like flat on their flat heads. It's ugly. I get it. I didn't like it in the first one either. I think it's so ugly. I think all you'd have to do is change the faces and the hair, and I'd be totally here for them.
Yeah.
And I've seen some people's art of them, or like some I've seen they've appeared in comics, and people definitely take liberties with their designs, sometimes big liberties and sometimes not super big liberties, and I think it's almost always an improvement.
For sure. I think the teeth on Gaira are fun too. I like that he has like fucking huge fucking choppers.
Okay. I do love the teeth on Gaira. The thing that I simply cannot get past for either of these designs, Gaira's nose is like a mystery to me. I don't understand what is supposed to be happening with it. It's like two noses, but it's not two noses.
Yeah.
It's really... I don't like it. I like his little tusk teeth on the bottom.
Yes, I think those are
bottom
cool.
of his mouth. I hate his nose. I got used to Sanda's face. I was like, you know what? Sanda's just kind of an ugly motherfucker, but whatever.
And that's fine. I don't mind them being intentionally ugly or grotesque.
Right.
It just feels a little bit unintentional in some of these cases, and it's more just confusing in some ways than it is like, oh, that's grotesque. Like, it's not like grotesque in the way that like Shin Godzilla's forms are. I think because it just feels a little cluttered and messy in some ways. I guess.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I would love to see. I don't know. I don't know what I would. I don't want to say a modern version of these, because that's not really what I want to see. But I do think, you know, maybe a version of these masks done 10 years later or something. I would love to see how they would have tackled that. You know, in the mid 70s instead, with, you know, more experience or more resource. Well, I don't know that they have more resources in the 70s, but
maybe the opposite of that, actually, fortunately.
Yeah. But I do think it would be nice to see what this sounds like a dig, but like higher quality attempts at making these masks, because I can see a version of them where they are supposed to look like more traditional monster mask designs, sort of like Oni adjacent type designs.
I think, I agree with that.
And I think that
the Oni inspiration would be fucking phenomenal.
I think that would change everything for you, honestly. Like,
I think it would.
I know that they're still humanoid, but
suddenly I'd be wanting to fuck them though. Like, I think that's what it would be, really.
And I think that's kind of maybe partially why I got used to their faces, was because I just kind of was being like, I think maybe that's what they're going for. So that's kind of how I'm envisioning them.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, they're interesting kaiju to have. I'll have more to say about them as we talk about the story and everything and their roles in it. But I think the other thing about them that is really cool that is the size of them.
Yes.
This, you know, Frankenstein versus Baragon, he like steadily grew, which was cool to see. But these guys are always the same size, but that size is very small compared to most other kaiju. And I think even like I read that it's like a thing that Honda liked seeing specifically was like getting to see Tsuburaya do more detailed sets than usual, because the sets had to be like bigger to scale with the smaller gargantuas proportionally, which means that, again, they're like more detailed. So they actually, in a way, put more effort into the sets than they normally do, because you're going to see them, you know, better with the gargantuas inside.
Yeah. Look, I have maybe some issues with like how they utilize a lot of the special effects and miniature work, but the special effects and miniature work look pretty great. So
yeah, I agree.
That's definitely not a weak point for this one. It's really good.
I don't have much information about this, but the little baby Sanda is
dude.
played by an actor, Yasuhiro Kamiya, who's a child actor. Don't know what happened to that kid. Can't find him anywhere. But
that's exactly like the last Baby Frankenstein, right? It was just like a kid who did that one time and then never showed up again.
Yep. In this case, weird little ugly monkey kid, I guess.
Okay.
It's weird. He reminds me of the monkey, like when the kid in Jumanji starts turning into a monkey.
What I was about to say. It's literally what I was about to say. It totally looks like, I mean, it's much uglier than that, because I actually think the kid turning into a monkey is like kind of a weird, horrific, cute sort of transformation. But this is absolutely that, but like way more. This is like if that kid were turning into the CGI monkeys in Jumanji. Like it's creepy. It's unsettling. I don't like it. It also looks nothing like Sanda, really. Like
it's really confusing, and that's and it's like both Sanda and like Baby Frankenstein in a way. Like they're kind of playing it both ways. And it's like you look like neither. Like what is this kid?
Yeah, it's just like a weird baby Bigfoot. Like, that's kind of what it is. I don't know.
Yep.
Creepy. Don't like it.
Creepy. Don't like it. Yep. That's where I'll land too. The only other creature type thing in this movie is the fucking giant octopus. It's the same prop that they had for the Frankenstein versus Baragon ending that they filmed. They just installed some lights in it and added some more tentacles to it, basically.
Okay, well, guess what? We've talked about 3 octopuses on this show, between King Kong versus Godzilla's gnarly octopus making horrible noises, the octopus that never should have been in Frankenstein versus Baragon, and then this octopus. This is by far my favorite one, like by leaps and bounds. I think it's utilized well. I think it looks cool here, probably because I don't fucking hate how they're using it. I think all their props within the environment look very cool too. Yes. I love it's how it looks, and I love the way they use it.
It's a cool opener. It is a cool opener to the movie. At immediately setting the stakes, because I do think it is really fun, because you immediately get a fun sort of horrific action sequence with an octopus attacking a boat, but then the stakes are raised up. So like, wait, is this monster rescuing them? Like when Gaira shows up is like, oh, so it's a creature rescuing them. I guess they're going to move on. But then like you see the kind of dark heart of this movie, because it's not like Godzilla attacking a monster and then they escape or whatever, or crash. It's like, no, he goes and fucking eats those people.
This movie is like weirdly dark. Like, it's we talked about the horror of Ishirō Honda in the Frankenstein versus Baragon one too, because there's like elements of horror, especially in the first half of that one, with the purely Frankenstein story of it. And like it's very clear that some of that is making its way into this one too. Like he's the one who never forgets, I think, that Frankenstein is this kind of horrific story about a sort of horror monster, you know? And so it's much darker. There are elements of this movie that are very, very, very deeply inspired by King Kong, but just go darker than King Kong does, you know? And I think this octopus here, yes, it absolutely sets the stage for this sort of like weirdly darker movie. But also one thing that I think is important, because I don't think we're going to talk about the octopus much more after this. No. It also establishes, not that we don't know this, and not that we necessarily need, you know, this to be demonstrated. People in the movie could tell us this. But it does demonstrate that this just is a world where large monsters exist. Like they just are around. And I do think that's actually an important, sometimes that's not that important for the context of the story that we're watching. Even if you know that it's true, right? Like Abira, that's one where it's like, yeah, there's probably just monsters around, but it's not that important for it to be a monster-filled world.
It's on an island.
Right. I do think it is kind of important for this movie to be told in a world where there are giant monsters at any given turn. And I think the octopus being at the beginning tells us that it's not just these 2 gargantuas. Yeah,
because that's true, because the mystery of this movie isn't like what is attacking people. It's more like, we know there's a giant monster out there. We just think it's your giant monster that you scientists were studying before. Like everyone kind of already knows that, which is where I think that's also part of the advantage of this being a pseudo sequel to Frankenstein versus Baragon, even though it also kind of isn't at the same time, is because they're sort of at least going into it intending to be playing in a world where creatures like this already exist. Whether this is related to the larger Toho Godzilla universe or not, like that part of it is true.
Well,
is what they're going.
And that's the thing is like, we're watching this in a very specific way that Hamish kind of talks about, right? Where it's sort of like, this is a shared universe in a way that, not in the way that we think of it now, but technology that advances in one movie could show up in another movie because it just now exists, right? And I think that this is a movie, knowing that so many people watched this one without seeing a bunch of the other Toho movies, or that this was their first one. Right, I do think it ends up being kind of important to establish that, like, no, this is a world where monsters just exist. It's not, it's, you know, it's not good that there's a giant here. We don't want the giant to be here, but it's not unusual. People aren't surprised that a giant exists.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of the people, weird segue, talking about the characters. So interesting. I mean, honestly, kind of a small cast to talk about this time.
Yeah,
really.
Very.
There's not really many people that have significant roles in it, which, you know what, made it easy for me putting these notes together, because really only like one or like two people that I like spent any time doing any research on. So our main, just like, you know, with these other collabs, like with Nick Adams, there's a sort of, like with Nick Adams or like with Road Reads, there is this sort of like American white man at the center of the story that, you know, is both meant to like give it a more international feel and also help it play when it's inevitably exported over to America, right? So in this case, like we said, it was supposed to be Nick Adams. It wasn't. He was recast with Russ Tamblyn as Dr. Paul Stewart. So Russ Tamblyn, he is someone that is very recognizable, actually. I think even more so than some of the other actors they've gotten. He's a former child actor, but he's known for things like being Riff, the leader of the Jets gang in 1961's West Side Story. That was definitely his big claim to fame, I think. He was also one of the leads in the 1963 version of The Haunting. And then also, I didn't even realize this, but like he also had a guest role because of his ties to The Haunting of Hill House. With The Haunting, he was in the 2018 Haunting of Hill House for like one episode in a supporting role.
That's fun.
Which is a fun cameo. He was also nominated for a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for his role in the 1957 film Peyton Place. So, you know, he's got cred in the mainstream. Yeah. But he's probably best known to the majority of people these days as being Dr. Jacoby in Twin Peaks, who, if you're not familiar with Twin Peaks, but you know any of the iconography, he's the dude with the beard and the red and blue glasses. Like, if you've seen that guy, that's Russ Tamblyn as Dr. Jacoby, right? So
yeah, a lot more. And I don't necessarily mean this as a dig to the other guys. It's a crapshoot for actors in this era if I'm going to know the things that they've done or not. But that's by far, like, I feel like the most stuff I've recognized from one of the actors that ends up in one of these movies.
He is. Like, Nick Adams did a lot of, like, did great stuff, but he was, like, always a supporting player in everything that he did. Mostly the things that he wasn't are things that unfortunately haven't remained in pop culture in the same way.
Yeah.
That Russ Tamblyn touched many things that remain in pop culture.
Also, Russ Tamblyn had a very long career, it seems like.
Yeah, like, still, I think he's like still around right now, right? So for Tamblyn, it was the same deal though as Nick Adams, where like they were kind of looking for an actor that was like had some sort of clout, but was also like on a career downswing.
Sure.
And for Tamblyn, he'd had his Oscar nom in 57, but he basically kind of followed that up for years after. Like he had an Oscar nom in 57, and then he was in West Side Story. So you'd think he was like kind of going somewhere,
right?
But then after West Side Story and then The Haunting, like he just ended up like spent the last half of the 60s just kind of doing a lot of like TV spots and stuff like that. Like he just like wasn't really getting many roles after those movies, and so he was kind of on the short list to be brought over to Japan because he just wasn't really doing much, but he was like well known. By all accounts, he apparently had a terrible time in Japan and was not happy being a part of the production at all. He allegedly had a hard time adjusting to Japanese culture. He apparently, you know, this is according to like Ishirō Honda's biography and some other books that I'll cite in the show notes.
Sure.
Or in the episode description. Like he wasn't very sociable, which isn't like a huge deal, but like he literally like shoot his scenes and then just like go back to his hotel and like not talk to anyone. And so that kind of created tension with actors on set because like they didn't really were able to get to know him. There was tension with Honda and Saperstein that I'll talk about in a sec.
Whoa.
But and Tamblyn would like admit later in interviews that he was just embarrassed to be doing the movie like while he was doing it and after it was wrapped. He says, and I quote, "I never thought anybody was going to see it. I was offered money and my wife at the time said I've always wanted to go to Japan." So like they went.
Oh, did he think it was like going to do a commercial that no one back home was ever going to know he did?
I think that's literally what he thought, because then he says, like, unfortunately for me, then the movie was released and they ran it on a Los Angeles TV station like every single night. And he thought, that's it. I'll never work again. So he thought this movie was like the death knell for him and people were going to see it. And suddenly he's a B movie actor in what he probably is thinking is some embarrassing, weird, bad Japanese movie that no one's going to like. And so he thought it was just a terrible experience on that front.
Damn.
And I think because he had the attitude that it's like, this shit doesn't matter and it's stupid and he's embarrassed by it, he just like he improvised a lot of his dialogue. He admitted to that. He said in interviews later that there is one interpreter that spoke English, which I'm sure was weird for him, that he's on a Japanese set, only really one person he can really communicate with. You know, he was like, I'm kind of in this for myself. So he says, lucky for me, they didn't know what I was saying half the time. So I changed all my lines my lines were so bad in the original script and I changed them all. So,
dude,
and I think when people realize it, they just like think it sucks and it's shitty. So they get mad at him for that kind of stuff. It also causes them problems because years later, when UPA does the dub of the film, apparently a lot of the sound quality that they filmed with Tamblyn on set wasn't that good. So they needed to have him to redub like pretty much all of his lines when they did the UPA dub. But then he has to go into the booth and be like he improvised his lines. They're not on the script. So like they have to like refigure out what he said on set that day in English and then redo those to like align his lip movements with it. And so there's probably stuff where like his lip movements don't align with it at all, you know? And there's like clips, there's like one clip, I don't have it to send to you, but like there's one clip on a video that I watched that was just a compilation of all the changes and everything. Yeah. There's one clip where like he's dubbing over himself and it's like him like saying a quip and then laughing after it. And you literally hear him like say the quip and just go, heh heh. Like phoning it in completely, like clearly not interested in being there.
This is honestly, it's like a bummer more than anything, you know,
I'm not.
Rhodes' reason was like clearly just like an asshole, and like Russ Tamblyn, this is kind of asshole-ish, but it's more like asshole in the like I'm not taking any of this seriously, and it's like come on, man, like it's
making it harder for everyone else.
You're causing problems for everybody else, and like it's not that big a deal. Like get over yourself, you know.
Yeah, well, for example, there's like one point during filming when, you know, they spend a lot of time like on cliff sides and things like that. And apparently like they were on a break. So he just started scaling a cliff just to like have fun, I guess, even though it was like prone to rock slides. And the crew was trying to tell him like, you're going to die. What are you doing? And he was like, no, I'm fine. Oh my God. Then they were going to start filming again. And he still was just like climbing the cliff for some reason because he wanted to just like do a bit, I guess, which pissed off Honda. And Honda's assistant director Seiji Tani has a quote where he says Honda-san had to hold back and bear so much during that one. Tamblyn was such an asshole. He says he was exactly like that character he played in West Side Story, like a hoodlum turned actor. Whoa. Raw, very selfish, rebellious, and disobedient. The director told him to come and walk from this side to the other, not giving any specific acting instructions, just explaining the scene. And Tamblyn said that he usually does the exact opposite of what the director says. What a punk. He pissed me off.
Oh, that's so... that is very annoying. And I'm looking. He's like 31, 32 at this point. It's he's not like a 20-year-old who just like whose head is big because they were in West Side Story. You know what I mean?
But like, also like, you know, I do, but I could also see it being like, you know, years ago, he would have nominated for an Oscar. He was in these big movies and now he's stuck doing this, that he probably is being a shitty about it just because it probably is a blow to his self-esteem to him that he has to be doing this. Yeah. That for him, it feels like he's sinking really low for this bullshit and he's just going to make it everyone else's problem.
Man,
you know?
That's so annoying. Just go show up, get your paycheck and leave if that's how it's got to be.
Yeah. He pissed off Saperstein too. So it wasn't even like Saperstein was the one who picked him out and cast him. And even he was sort of like agreeing with Honda and on Honda's side about it. He has a quote later where he says Nick Adams was a consummate pro and blended in very easily, but Tamblyn was a royal pain in the ass.
Damn. Wow.
Yeah, they fucking hated this guy, man.
It's so funny. It's just, I not that I knew anything about this guy, not that I think he's particularly great in this movie or anything, but like for some reason I'm so surprised. Like, I don't know.
I don't know.
I guess because I didn't think he was great. I didn't think he was like acting a whole lot. And so it's not like, I don't know. It just doesn't, I don't know what I expected.
I don't know. Tamblyn himself has said in the years since that like he's learned to love the movie. You know, I think he's mellowed out and not embarrassed by it, but also it's sort of like, well, you know, he did cause a lot of problems though, so like maybe own after that.
Yeah.
He also has this really backhanded quote where he says, "I liked working with Honda because he didn't give me too much direction. The best directors I worked with gave me very little direction."
Okay.
I
like that director who doesn't direct.
Yeah.
Which, like, one, isn't true, obviously, but two.
Yeah. And I probably wasn't giving you much direction because he realized you were a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And, was just,
and
like,
you weren't
fine.
listening anyway.
Yeah. And they like had to knock this movie out in like 2 months. So like, whatever then. Yeah. It sucks. It's funny. It's different. I'm not like screaming mad like I was with Rhodes Reason because he was like so blatantly just being a racist piece of shit.
Right.
But like at least Rhodes Reason seemed to have like done his job, you know, like even if he was even if it was like being difficult in that he was being shitty and pompous and asking like rude questions and shit like that and pushing back, he still was like acting and like did turn in a good performance in that movie.
Yeah. It's like Rhodes Reason was being more like outwardly and loudly kind of racist in the things that he was doing. I think Russ Tamblyn is doing much more of the casual racism thing where he's not taking any of this seriously. And I do think a big part of it is the fact that it is a Japanese special effects movie with monsters.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know what I mean? And I suspect that he is probably just not taking a Japanese director as seriously as he would an American director. So, you know, it's still bad, and I still think that has to be a part of what was happening there. But it, you know, I don't know. It still just feels more like a bummer than it is making me angry, like with Rhodes Reason. It's two very different versions of disrespect, though.
Right, like poor Honda getting these 2 years in a row, getting like, experiences like this, like, sucks. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? You don't have to cast white people in your movie. It's fine.
No,
just
ever.
don't do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
It's not working out well for you. Nick Adams was a fluke. Like
Truly.
Your special circumstance that worked out.
For real. Jeez.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's like I didn't necessarily have a deep appreciation for Nick Adams or anything. I didn't think he was like amazing in his movies or anything. I think he's serviceable, but now I'm sort of like, you know what? You go, milquetoast man. Like if it means you're also not a disrespectful prick, like be boring. Go off.
Yeah. Right. Have fun in your movie. That's all you need. You know. Yeah, I mean, this character, I don't know. I really have truly nothing to say about this character.
It's frustrating. I think Russ Tamblyn, I didn't know why this was the case. I mean, now I know that it's because he wasn't taking it seriously. I didn't know if this was somebody who hadn't acted a whole lot before or what, but it's like clear he's not giving much. And so, you know, not knowing if it's him choosing not to give much, which is the answer, or if he doesn't know how to give much, which is not the answer. I just was sort of like, okay, this is an underwhelming performance. As far as the character of Dr. Stewart, like, I'll say that. I mean, the character doesn't even need to be in the movie. Everything he does can be done by Akemi. None of the dubs I ever saw said any of the names right. Well, I guess the Japanese one would have, but none of the English subtitles don't even spell it right.
Jesus.
But whatever. Akemi like could have done everything pretty much that he does in her capacity as well. But I mean, this is like this. I mean, I guess there are times where they have to be separate, which you'd have to figure out. But in that case, make it just entirely about Akemi and Mamiya.
Right. Yeah, that's the. I mean, because like, I'm sorry, Kumi Mizuno, Kenji Sahara, much stronger actors in this movie than Russ Tamblyn.
Well, and taking it seriously.
Yeah, and taking it seriously. And you know what? It would also give Kenji Sahara something to do. Why do they keep putting this guy in fucking movies and then not giving him anything?
I don't know. It's so
he just
strange.
keeps showing up and he's just like one of the core trio, and he just stands there just being like, yeah, I agree with you. That's like all he does the whole movie.
Yeah, it's weird because like at least the guys that you see all the time, like Yoshifumi Tajima, who's also in this movie.
Like and Jujuzaki too. He's also like fucking always popping up in this shit.
And at least when you see those guys, it's like, yeah, they're in every movie because they're not the leads of the movie. They are off to the side a lot, or they're saying things that move things along, but they're not focal points. Kenji Sahara, it is so strange that they keep putting him in these like lead or like secondary lead sort of roles, but then not giving him anything to do. It's weird.
After
it's like,
he's been the protagonist of movies before. Yeah. Protagonist or like main villain of movie. Like
Yeah.
he has been like main big characters before, and they just instead they've just been pivoting.
I mean,
like in the years after, in these weird thankless roles for him.
They
it's so
do.
strange.
I mean, I guess we have to think of it maybe in context. Like they do work under studio contracts, right? So
Yeah, I
like
guess
he
so.
has to be in a
Yeah.
certain number of movies, I'm sure.
That's probably what it is.
Or he
That's
has
all
to
it
be
is.
constantly working, and he has been a lead, so it probably would be weird to put him in several movies in a background capacity. But also he's been the lead over and over, like, or several times, so they probably don't want him to be the lead every time. Although I don't know that a lot of us would complain.
No,
so I don't know.
I don't know.
Who knows? I guess there is an appeal to having a new lead for each one of your movies, I guess. But I don't know, man. He's right there and he's talented. Let him do stuff. Let him act.
That's the thing. I don't need him to be the most important character every time, but it's like it ends up being a waste of a character because it's like, why is that? Like they're not even playing with the classic like love triangle thing with these guys. He literally is just like an assistant to an assistant. It feels like is what his role is in this movie.
He's truly just there. I mean, Dr. Stewart is there as like the expert, right? And Akemi is there.
Kumi Mizuno should be the fucking expert.
Yes.
But anyway,
100%. And this is a thing. And this is a thing maybe by coincidence, maybe by design. I don't really know. I don't know what your alchemy is for picking the movies necessarily, but not yet, at least, because I still don't know why we watched this one.
Yeah, you won't yet.
But we have now encountered several times in a row, and I think we've identified a very clear pattern of like women in these movies, not all the time, but often get to be scientists if there is something to take care of or something to emotionally connect to. And that is exactly what Kumi Mizuno gets to do in this movie. She should be the expert on Frankenstein monsters, and she can be the expert on Frankenstein monsters and have an emotional connection to Sanda. They don't need to be separate things. You don't need to have this boring stone-faced man be the expert on the Frankenstein monsters.
Yeah.
And if you don't have
1966, so
I know, but if you don't have but then if you don't have Russ Tamblyn doing it, have Kenji Sahara do it, and then you just have a movie led by a duo where Kenji Sahara's character is the man expert on Frankenstein monsters, and Kumi Mizuno's character is also an expert but only gets to be emotional. You know what I mean? Like whatever. That it would at least fit the era, and it would utilize the people they have.
Yeah,
but they can't get rid of their white man from this deal. Right. I mean, I get why he's there, but it's frustrating.
Yeah, I understand. I just wish that they would balance it out between all of them better in that case.
Yeah,
and it's never not going to be weird. I know that we're dealing with these Toho movies, and they just like recast actors, or they cast actors as different characters, even though those characters are basically the same, but just different in name only. I know they do that all the time. They did, the Mothra movies did that and stuff like that too, you know.
But this one feels egregious,
but it's
because
very weird. She is just the same character Kumi Mizuno played in the last movie, just named a different name. It's so weird. And if she was the only actor returning and reprising her character's role, what a great opportunity that would have been to let her be the same character and be the expert because she went through the last movie.
It wouldn't have been weird at all.
Yeah.
There's obvious they want a background to this movie, and she is right there. Like she is your background. Yeah. She does the same thing.
And she's so really like bizarre. Good all the time, and it ends up making her like it. I mean, again, kind of like Kenji Sahara, like even though she's in the movie a lot more and has a bigger role, it still kind of wastes her talents a lot because we've seen her do such fucking cool shit in other movies. And here she really is just like the mommy figure and then the damsel in distress. Like she at least is like prominent in the movie. Like she doesn't have nothing to do, but like her talents are wasted on this character.
Yeah,
you know?
She doesn't. Yeah. I mean, that's 100% true. I'm trying to think of the things that she does sort of get to do. I mean, at the very least, Akemi is somebody who does have like her own opinions and confidence in her knowledge and experience. She does interject into conversations to like share her expertise. There are times where the men don't want her to do something and she's like, no, fuck that, I'm going to do this because I can do this. So that's like it's still not great, but I'm trying to find the value in here, and I do think there is some there.
She's not a nothing character, and I didn't mean to frame it like that.
No, I don't think you necessarily were. I think it's still a waste of her talents. And I do think it undercuts it by making her a whole new character, because you could have just built on what you had before instead of reestablishing all the same stuff.
Because her backstory is still the same as what her previous character was, which is I formed an emotional connection with the Frankenstein monster in the lab, raising it since it was a child. Like, it's the exact same backstory as her previous character in the last movie had anyway.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
It's weird. I mean, all that said though, like, this is a trio that is like right there alongside our sort of like unremarkable trios. Like, this really isn't. I don't think what's interesting about this movie is the human story, which I also
barely is one, really.
Right, and I think I thought that about the Frankenstein versus Baragon one. I think what was interesting about the Frankenstein versus Baragon trio was that all three of them were considered experts, and it allowed for them to have interesting dynamics in what their opinions were about what was happening. But this movie doesn't go that far, so they are just like kind of a lesser version of the Frankie versus Barry trio.
Yeah, I mean, this one, they are always just sort of like, we need to protect our Frankenstein monster. They're good. Like, they're all kind of on the same wavelength. There
are little elements of Dr. Stewart that I find interesting because, there are things about Dr. Stewart that make him distinct from maybe some of the other doctors we've seen. He's kind of manipulative. He's kind of like the way that him caring about keeping the Frankenstein monster, whichever one at any given time, alive, manifests very differently than the way that Akemi's does. Akemi's is very like, I care about this thing and I'm going to make an emotional appeal to the people who want to destroy him. And my emotional appeal is my strategy in trying to save these things because I care and they should care too.
Sure.
Dr. Stewart's never trying to convince people not to destroy one of the monsters because it's like right. He tries to make these like logical arguments or he tries to like reframe the way that the military might be thinking a strategy to try to like move them in a different direction. So like the one example I can think of like very clearly off the top of my head is when that there are two monsters and he specifically like manipulates one of the military generals into being like into not being concerned about Sanda. And he does that several times in front of military people and whatnot. So I do think there's like an interesting little kernel of something about Dr. Stewart as he's written, not necessarily how he's acted, but how he's written that does make him a little bit distinct. It's like a character that if you got to see a lot more of, could very easily have a heel turn because you were sort of like, I don't know, man, you were kind of always riding the line of like being a good guy and being sort of a manipulative, sneaky guy,
Yeah.
I could see him
it's fun
in a longer term story being one of the doctors in any one of these stories that ultimately does something, wrong or bad in the interest of humanity. And you're sort of like, but what you did was wrong. And he's like, but it was logical and it saved people. You're like, oh, you just turned into a bad guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. I mean, this movie could have had room for more moral ambiguity, I think, given the fact that it is ultimately about two monsters that are fighting each other but are still brothers, and like the good one doesn't really want to fight the bad one until he's like pushed to do it. And I think I wish they maybe could have played a little more in the ambiguity of just sort of like, if Sanda was like upset that humans were fucking with his brother and maybe for a bit was like rebelling against the humans, but then it's sort of like, but I'm torn because I love humanity and I'm peace loving, but also these fuckers mess with my brother. And then realizing like, oh fuck, but actually my brother's kind of evil. And I feel like you could have had sort of the scientist side of it kind of playing into that too, of just them being like, well, but no, are you good or bad or not? Is the line as clear as we think it is? And maybe I'm going to push Sanda too far with my sciencing or something like that. I don't know.
Well,
like, there's room that they could have played with that.
Here's what I think is interesting about that where the humans do get interesting in intersecting with stuff. And this specifically applies again to Dr. Stewart and Akemi because Kenji Sahara's character doesn't even get to have opinions really.
Nope.
So, like, what I do think is interesting is kind of in the realm of what you're talking about, because this movie it introduces Gaira immediately. Gaira's the one that you know first. Gaira is the Frankenstein monster. If you did not know that there were two of them, like, that just would be your monster for the movie, and is your monster for the movie for a long time, and is presented similarly to a lot of monsters you would expect in a movie like this.
Right.
And because that's the case, Dr. Stewart and Akemi are hesitant to believe this, but believe that Gaira is their Frankenstein monster for at least certain portions of time. Or if they don't fully believe it, they know it's possible, right? Like, Dr. Stewart acknowledges, like, I thought he was dead, but it is not impossible that he's alive. And so that mere possibility does force your two human characters that you're supposed to agree with, that you're supposed to root for, that are your protagonists, to advocate for keeping alive the monster that ultimately is the one who is the most violent. Like, Gaira is eating people, which is so fucked up. And these two doctors, these two scientists are the sole people in any given room being like, yeah, but you still shouldn't kill him, even though this monster is actively seeking out people to eat, which is very different than a lot of the monsters we've seen.
Yeah. And it's also, like, because it's such a human monster, it's like way more of a cannibalism thing than an animal eating people thing too. So, like, there's a lot of added ickiness with Gaira.
Right. So I do think that's really interesting. I think that's an interesting thing to have in there. I think it's interesting when it does get to manifest. I think it can remain interesting once Sanda is there, but I think where the human side of things begin to fail is once Sanda shows up, Dr. Stewart and Akemi are just kind of in the clear now, because it's sort of like, okay, well, that one's ours, and so just don't kill that, especially with Dr. Stewart. Akemi, I think, always wants to protect both of them because they're living things. Dr. Stewart is more tactical about it. And so if he can't save them both, he's going to choose how to save Sanda. And then he's sort of hands are clean if they destroy Gaira, right?
Right.
Where it could have been way more interesting is if, because they had been advocating for keeping Gaira alive, that puts them in more conflict, like actual movie narrative conflict with like the military, even after Sanda shows up, you know?
Yeah.
It kind of does. It makes people not take them as seriously, or it makes them sort of like the weird ones in the room, or like the sort of high and mighty, like, you know, unreasonable ones in big quotes. But it never really puts them into a place where they're outcast from those rooms. They never have to work their way back into those rooms. They never have to sort of like operate without the resources because they've been pushed out of those rooms. And that's where the interesting human story, I think, could have been. They started it and they have a little bit of it, but it doesn't really like reach its full potential, which I do think is generally the story of this movie.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Cause the human stuff does feel kind of empty, and I would be like, and we've seen movies like that where it's sort of like the human story just isn't the focus, and that's fine with some of these, but then you kind of have to have the monster story like be interesting. And the monster story isn't not interesting, but I think it could have been more interesting if they were like, I think that Sanda should have been like more of a protagonist. And I think it honestly was a mistake to take so long to introduce Sanda into the story.
So I do think the monster story is interesting. I do think it could have been more interesting for sure. I think the big mistake isn't even necessarily that Sanda shows up too late. It's, and you know, you could tell me these are the exact same things, but I think it's more that Gaira is focused on solely for way too long. There is a moment that is, it's not a moment, it's 10 full minutes that is just the military like wailing on Gaira. And
weird
it's like
how long the fucking lasers, whatever you call them, just shooting at him just constantly. And I was like, when is there something wrong with is my streaming player like glitching and it's just like looping or something? Like, why is this going on for so long?
Well, and that's, to me, that's where I more than anything else, I think it's like how they utilize their time, which then affects pacing, which then affects when you can introduce Sanda, that I think really drags this movie down, because the movie looks good. Like,
it does. It looks really good.
It's Honda and Tsuburaya. Like their movie's going to look good. It's Ifukube. Yeah. It sounds good. The music
the actual
is
fight
good,
sequences are fucking cool as shit.
Right. So like that's absolutely not the problem. And honestly, Tsuburaya, for whatever reason, seems like I don't know how much of this movie was like his opportunity to just like play, but it really does feel like he is like playing a lot in this movie, almost like to its detriment, because there end up being these like really, really long sequences of like just playing almost.
Yeah.
But if it weren't for those big stretches, if you could be more efficient with the time, I do think the monster story is interesting. I think it's cool that it ends up being this scenario where humans raised a monster. They have already sort of grieved its death. They don't think it exists anymore. And then it shows up in big quotes, and it's doing these heinous things. And then they discover like, oh, it's an offshoot of our monster, and it has transformed based on its environment. And this opens up like this wild potential for this species of gargantuas based on where they might end up, how they might multiply, because they go way heavier on the fact that like these cells can regenerate to create new gargantuas, not just that it can regenerate its body.
Frightening.
Right. I mean, at one point Stewart says in a few years there could be 1,000 of them, like if you were not careful with how you destroy them. I think that's very interesting too. That's not necessarily super different from other monster movies, but there is something specific about it, which is, you know, they have to completely annihilate these monsters. Otherwise, they run the risk of birthing hundreds more at a time. Yeah. I think the stakes are cool. I think the stakes in this movie are cool. I think the fact that they're related makes that cool. I think the fact that these cells could show up anywhere, and you could have a volcano version of a gargantua. You could have a deep,
elemental gargantua.
Yeah, like a deep sea version of a gargantua. You could have a snow version of a gargantua. Like, I think there's something really cool to the lore that they build upon and sort of open up the world with. That's why I say I think this is important for this movie to be told in the context of a world where giant monsters just exist, because then I think the stakes become more real. It's like, yeah, that actually could happen. There actually could be 1,000 of these things on Earth.
Yeah, there's I don't know the truth in this, because there's only like one place that I found that like actually cites it specifically, but there's a book called Age of the Gods: A History of Japanese Fantasy Film that apparently has an interview with Honda in it, where Honda talks about an alternate ending that they originally had for this movie, where the underwater volcano thing would have still happened, but like lava somehow would have like actually spread to Tokyo and like destroyed the city along with the remaining cells, because that was like the only way to completely eliminate all the cells of the gargantuas, which would have been a darker ending because you fucking blew up, you destroyed the whole city. Right. And so I don't know if that's totally true or not, because I don't really haven't seen that other places, but it's an interesting solution, quote unquote, to like the problem they establish in this movie, that like every like piece of flesh these guys shed can turn into another one of these dudes. And we see how violent they can be under the right circumstances. So the only way you could do it would just be to fucking just like
vaporize them.
Vaporize them and just fucking the collateral damage would be unreal. They tease like they have it's the maser cannons are what the satellite dish looking laser things are, and like those things are there, but then they have to escalate to like suggesting like napalm like while they're in the woods, so they're gonna burn the whole fucking forest down, and like of course like it's gonna keep escalating from there, right?
Yeah, I mean it's I think one of the darkest moments of the movie is where Dr. Stewart says, like, because Dr. Stewart's like, you can't destroy them because they are going to create more. This is where he presents the, like, there could be 1,000 of them. The military specifically responds with, but you said they're shedding their cells anyway, so we could end up with 1,000 anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
And Dr. Stewart was like, right, which means we need to contain them, not kill them. And then the military responds with, okay, well, if we destroy them and there are pieces left, we'll get the chemical warfare team and mop the pieces up.
That's right.
Mop up the pieces with napalm is like so dark. Like, I don't know. I do think there is a dark undertone to this that is in some of the conversations that just don't get focused on quite enough.
I agree.
I think you could so easily retell this story in a way that would like hit so fucking hard. Because I think a lot of the things that I like about some of these monster movies, some of the moral dilemmas, some of the stakes, some of the weird lore that can kind of only exist in a world with gigantic monsters all over the place, all are in here, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think, I do think the thing that makes this movie so interesting in the broadest sense is just that you have your main monsters aren't just animals. It isn't just one animal. It isn't just two animals. It's that it's two brothers who recognize their relationship with each other, and one is like peace loving and good, and one is violent and bad.
Yeah.
And like that already is so different from any other Toho kaiju movie, even when there are multiple monsters in them.
Well, and at a point when Godzilla is rapidly becoming a heroic figure, it's really kind of cool for them to do a movie where like Gaira, I don't think there's ever a moment once we really get into it that Gaira is like, quote, redeemed. Like Gaira stays wanting to eat people. Gaira stays wanting to destroy stuff. Like Gaira is like, it feels weird to say because we talk so much about like the tragedy of being a kaiju, you know, but like Gaira is bad. Gaira Gaira must be stopped, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think like one of my favorite parts of the movie is like Sanda, who is caring for his brother and trying to protect him best he can, coming to the realization that his brother is a fucking monster.
Yeah.
Like seeing the remnants of all the people that he's eaten and being like, okay, I guess I gotta fucking kill my brother. Like,
right. Where else have we seen that? We've seen monsters recognize each other as, you know, enemies, or Godzilla recognize or as allies, or Godzilla be positioned in a place where he has to stop the monster that we know is the sort of bad monster or whatever. But when have we ever seen a monster want to care for another monster and then have to have the like deeply disappointing human reaction of I can't help this guy, so now I have to stop him.
Yeah, right. And I don't know, but that's also why I feel like Sanda should have been more the protagonist in the movie. I know Sanda is the monster, so they never would have not had humans at the center of the story to be the textbook protagonist, but I think Sanda could have been positioned more as a character that we followed for a longer period of time, because that arc is so interesting. And I kind of wish we could have seen more layers to it, because I think it would have been even more of a devastating turn when it's like Sanda is constantly trying to stop the violence and like trying to protect Gaira and putting all the faith in Gaira. And I think they could have communicated that. I think it's because it's wordlessly communicated just through body language and eye acting through these characters. Seeing Sanda have that entire revelation and entire arc, it's incredibly well acted in that scene. I love that scene a lot. Absolutely my favorite scene of the movie is Sanda having that realization. But it would have hit so much harder if we'd been following Sanda and seeing some of that internal conflict for him throughout the movie. I think it would have been really interesting to see that.
Yeah, this is I think a more modern structure than I think I could reasonably expect them to apply to this story. But like, I do think they could have kind of had their cake and eaten it too if they had, you know, told Sanda's story largely through flashbacks until Sanda actually shows up in the present. Because if they had done it carefully, you and the characters in the movie would have believed that you were telling Gaira's story that whole time. Because at that point, you only know that there's one. So I do think there's a cool sort of maybe more modern structure or remake version of this movie where, I mean, I don't know that it would be as effective because you know that there's two of them. And I guess looking at the poster, you would have known that there's two of them.
Yeah.
You're not really pulling off like a Rodan twist with how they've advertised this one.
It's weird that it's because it is played as a twist in the context of the movie when Sanda shows up, but like, it's in the title. So like,
I know it's weird because they could have, but I don't know that they were thinking. I mean, they clearly weren't thinking that way, right? They wanted it to be a battle, and they wanted you to know that it was a battle. Right. But I do think there's a really interesting version of that movie that gets to do what you're talking about and gets to play the mystery of, is it their Frankenstein or is it not? Like, are they advocating for the right thing or are they not? Right. And then they get to have all this time with Gaira where you still get Sanda's story, but you don't necessarily realize that they're separate stories until Sanda shows up. Like, I really, I don't, you know, this movie being made as fast as it was, on top of in the context that these movies are made just timeline wise, like really was never going to allow what's cool about this movie to be the coolest version of itself. But I do think there's like cool, unique stuff in this movie that I haven't seen yet. And I think the relationship between Gaira and Sanda, I wouldn't be surprised if the relationship between Gaira and Sanda is why people connect so much with this movie. Cause
I think so.
I mean, Mothra and Godzilla have a relationship, but it's not this,
Well, I think my theory as to why this movie is, has historically hit so hard with people is I do think that if you watch this movie as a kid or a young person, I think that the Sanda Gaira story, it's very simple. It's very straightforward. And I think it is very relatable, especially if you're a kid who has brothers and sisters of struggling and fighting with your brothers and sisters. And that weird conflict of like, I love them, but I also fucking hate them and they make me so mad.
Yeah.
I think kids can really relate to that. And then I think you have the sort of emotional catharsis at the end if you are connecting with those two characters of like Sanda was the good one and still has to sacrifice himself at the end to stop the bad one. You know, like it's a very, I think that some of those things are things that really can hit really well with kids in a very simple, straightforward way. In a way that even something like, the original Godzilla, I think is a little more complex for a kid to connect with in that way necessarily. Like this is so easy to connect with. Like, so I think it totally makes sense. Like especially in the 70s when this was playing on TV a lot,
right?
To like experience and like have their eyes open to this wild monster movie that tells this sort of sibling story that they could relate to.
Yeah, and they wouldn't even have to change like any of the darker elements to it because the way that they play the darker elements isn't in like any sort of like shocking or gory way. So like it could easily be that kind of movie that people relate to early on for what you're talking about and then watch later and be like, holy shit, that was actually like a little bit darker than I realized,
Right, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I also like that this movie like builds further on and kind of transforms a little bit, I think, for the better how Frankenstein versus Baragon established what a Frankenstein monster is in this universe. Because in Frankie versus Barry, it's like we have the heart, and as long as there is a piece of it, it could grow into a monster, and that monster could continue to grow and continue to grow. And that's kind of all we know about how it changes. But in this one, in addition to the fact that it can asexually reproduce, basically, they adapt to their environment, but also Gaira adapts to the situations. Like Gaira ends up learning what it can and can't endure, and it begins to start making associations with some of those things. So like their first weapon against Gaira is light, and after a certain period of time, using it enough times, Gaira's like, fuck it, I want to get to that light because every time I get to light, there's food there. So I can endure some light if it means I can eat some people. They comment on that too.
Yeah, and it all makes sense because it's like he grew. It was flesh that grew in the sea, in darkness, right? So of course he's going to be susceptible to light, but like he's not susceptible to light because he's a fucking vampire. It's just because he's not used to it and adapted to it. He adapts to it. Like yeah you're right. It makes a lot of sense.
I love the line. It associates light with food now. I was like, yeah, that's cool. And we don't have that many monsters whose goal is to eat people. So when else are you going to get to say that,
Yeah. And it is very cool that like the way that they're trying to avoid him is like having the whole city turn its lights off. Like, or I guess turn the lights on. It has the whole city turn the lights on.
We saw both. They did it both times. Cause at first they're like, well, everyone turn your lights on and make sure your blinds are open so that the city is as bright as possible. Cause it doesn't like light. And then when it adapts, they're like, wait, shit. Everyone turn it off. Like, I think that's fun, especially because we've seen versions of that where it's like Godzilla's attracted to light. So everybody turn the lights off and you get this sort of eerie moment out of it. This is like more of a, it's not played to be eerie. It's more played to be a complication that I think ultimately works. I think I like better the idea that these Frankenstein monsters that can regenerate are actually a problem because they adapt in their regeneration and have their regeneration also means they are like capable of rapid adaptation. I think that's like way more interesting in the world than just like this Frankenstein monster could grow big enough to eat the earth. Like, or I guess it grow big enough to not be able to, live any longer.
Yeah. Right.
That can only kind of go so far.
Yeah. I need to talk about our brief musical sequence with the club singer.
It's incredible. It's so good. This is one of the best parts of the movie, and I can't wait to hear what you say, because if you don't like it, I'm hanging up the call.
I think it's funny. So the singer is portrayed by Kip Hamilton, who was a longtime actress. She's acted for a very, very long time. She's also Carol Burnett's sister-in-law, weirdly.
What?
Like, yeah, isn't that weird? The stuff she'd appeared in like the Burt Lancaster, Audrey Hepburn Western, The Unforgiven, which is a very famous movie. But she was mostly like a TV actor. She's been like Bewitched. She was in Perry Mason alongside Raymond Burr, which is not the first time that's come up. This is actually her last film appearance.
Whoa.
And allegedly, the reason she's in this movie is because at the time she was Henry Saperstein's girlfriend. He insisted on having the sequence go on for very long. He had them film tons of alternate takes and scenes, had lots of extra footage. I think he ended up like not even using any of it in his version of the movie, but like
not in the movie he didn't use it.
Right. Yeah. Made fucking sure he had plenty of views of his alleged girlfriend. And this is just funny. This song, which was, I believe, like made for this movie, it was covered by Devo in the year 2000. They did a cover of the song.
Somehow that like makes sense to me.
Yeah, doesn't it just like make sense?
Yeah. Like,
and if you listen to it, you're sort of like, this maybe
it
is the most Devo song that's ever existed.
Yeah. That's really funny.
The words get stuck in my throat. If you've ever heard that by Devo, it comes from this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that it's pretty drawn out, but I'm not wrong, right? You think like that's cool. You think that scene's
fun.
Cool?
I love the scene. I think the song fucks. It's such a fun song.
Yeah, it's a fun song. It gets stuck in your head or your throat. And I do think it's a cool environment. It's a cool set. I like that it's a bunch of people at a concert outside. And this is one of those moments that's like obviously very deeply inspired by like King Kong types of stories. I mean, this is literally one of the times where we get the big King Kong sort of hand grabbing.
He at least, you know what? Gaira waited till she finished her song before he grabbed her because he liked her song.
She should have kept singing, you know?
Really, truly.
Maybe that's the key. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's really cool having the crowd watch her sing and then see Gaira pop up and she doesn't realize what they are seeing. Like, I think that's always kind of fun. It's the first time we see, not the last time we see, Gaira pick up a woman and then in just the most opposite King Kong way possible, just fucking drop them.
Oh my God, it's so violent. It's so violent. Dropped hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's implied that she's dead in this.
Yeah.
Like someone is sort of like, is she dead? And like, I'm like,
at the very least, they think she's dead, which I think is enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause she has dropped hard.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then later Akemi is dropped hard on a set of stairs.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's interesting to put against King Kong stories because King Kong is a misunderstood giant who is really attracted to like the beauty of these women. I mean, you can read it all many different ways, but you know that he is attracted to the beauty of these women and generally gets to a point where even if he is taking them or kidnapping them, is usually pretty gentle with them. And in movies we've watched, like with Escapes, gets to a point where like he will very gently put you down if you are a pretty woman who asks him to put you down, you know?
Right.
It's like very, very different than what Gaira's doing, even though Gaira's in a very similar situation.
Yeah.
Which again is interesting if this is a big universe with lots of monsters, because it's possible that King Kong exists in the same universe and people aren't expecting for Gaira, well, one, not to eat you, but two, to just like fucking drop you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's cool. I think I agree with you. It's a cool sequence. It's a cool sequence.
It's fun.
Love that song. Probably going to play this podcast out on that song.
I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
Should I do her version or the Devo version?
Ooh, great question. Which one's more likely to get struck by Spotify?
Oh, probably I'll see which one is on Spotify. Probably her version then. Yeah. One thing that's interesting about this movie, these shots sometimes of like, that's like, the what's left behind when the sort of destruction happens and people are eating. There's like a shot of like flowers lying on the ground, like a bouquet of flowers that a woman was holding after she gets eaten. And then there's a similar shot later on after like the young people are attacked in the woods. That's just an empty rowboat in the water.
Yes.
I don't think they do it a third time. Are those the only times they do it that you can remember?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I wasn't tracking that specifically. It's only now that you're pointing them out that I'm realizing it was a pattern. So yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, the boat one is the one that like really stands out to me because it was a boat with people and now there's no people and it's very clear what you're supposed to believe happened. I don't know. I do think despite knowing this movie was made very quickly and not necessarily an easy one, it still manages to find ways to be pretty beautiful, like at points, you know. There are still environments we haven't necessarily seen exactly. There's like
every set is cool. Like the set piece in this movie is really cool.
Yeah, it's nice to look at. I mean, even if the monsters aren't nice to look at, the movie is nice to look at.
The airport is a really cool sequence. I love getting like kaiju stuff there.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Like it's such a cool, like I never would have thought of that, but that's such a cool setting to see that sort of destruction happening because people are just sort of packed there.
Yeah.
They're packed in those buildings and it's chaotic already, but also right outside the airport is just like this wide open space.
Oh my God.
So you get to have your cake and eat it too with them, you know?
You know what I just realized is like Godzilla 2014, the first time you get a good look at Godzilla is also at an airport. It's such a good setting. This makes so much sense. And this,
like
I think this is the first time we saw it, right? Well, in this way where it's like, you see the people's sort of perspective of the monster out in the sort of open airport.
Because it's early. Whatever. It's early in the morning. It's early in the movie.
Yeah. It's very cool. That's also when you really get to see the difference in how these monsters move from other monsters we've seen. Like King Kong is basically the same shape and has the same sort of, you know, would have the same types of abilities, but he's fighting Godzilla, which doesn't move the same way. These two are the only monsters we really get to see outside the octopus, and they are both humanoid, and they are just men in loose suits. They can fucking book it if they want to. And I do think there is something simultaneously very funny and delightful, and also like hard to and terrifying to imagine about that situation being real. Like it's funny to watch Gaira like run and then like leap arms open over like an obstacle. It's like charming in a weird way.
Yeah.
But like what is that like in real life? Like when I imagine monster fights that are gargantuan, especially in like modern special effects movies, it's like slow and like lumbering and like, you know, everything feels slower and bigger and more exaggerated because we're tiny little ants. But like if they're moving this fast, like it'd be terrifying. It'd be and wrestling as fast as they do, like it'd be terrifying.
Yeah. I think the underground mall towards the end is also like a really cool setting because it's like almost kind of eerie to have just like two characters in that mall area and then seeing just like Gaira's just like feet and hands right through the opening staircase from it, you know?
Yeah, you're right. That is another like cool, unique scenario. They have a lot of them. The mall and there's like city spaces that they sort of highlight that are pretty cool. I do like that. I mean, a mall is always cool.
A mall's always cool, especially when it's empty. Then it's like suddenly creepy.
Way cooler.
Yeah.
I love when they pick up boats.
Sure.
I love it.
So.
I don't know. I think it's fun. Like they're like just the right size for it not to feel insignificant.
Okay.
You know, like they're not so big that it's like, oh, this tiny boat in the palm of my hand. But they are big enough to pick them up. So it's like funny. I don't remember who does it, Gaira or Sanda, but one of them picks up a boat and like throws it at the other one. And that's really funny. So funny to me, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's like picking up of tanks too and throwing tanks.
Sure. Oh yeah, a lot of that. Especially like the big ones with the lights. Maybe a few too many times. Maybe we didn't need to see that happen 4 times in a row.
I would agree with that.
Once would have been cool and gotten the point across, but that's also in that big like 10-minute stretch of just like
I'm not a fan of that 10-minute stretch.
I'm not either. I don't like it. And
really drags.
Watching it a second time was like agonizing, but I really wanted to be sure, like, cause I was like, there has to be dialogue in here. And there is dialogue, but all the dialogue in that 10 minutes is like somebody in the military giving orders or like somebody advising the military on what to do next. It's like the most boring 10 minutes of almost any. No, it's the most boring 10 consecutive minutes, I think, of any movie we've watched so far. Because nothing really. I mean, it looks cool. The special effects are good. The miniatures are great. But narratively, thematically, nothing is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think I like how grody Gaira looks after he's been fucking hit with those lasers.
God, dude.
For the whole rest of the movie.
Okay,
too.
how are you interpreting that? Are you interpreting that as burns or blood or both?
Both.
Yeah,
I think it's both.
Gnarly. And it doesn't change, right? Like the chunks, it looks like chunks are missing, or like he has open burn wounds.
Like the whole rest of the movie, yeah.
Stay there, yeah.
It is an interesting choice that like the final fight, which is really the one big, the only time there is a significant fight is the final fight between Sanda and Gaira, and both of them are like not at their best because Gaira's like burned all to hell and was just previously on the edge of death. Yeah. And Sanda's like leg is broken or whatever, like from falling off a cliff.
Oh shit, that's right. Yeah.
You know? So like they're fighting like not at their best anyway, which I think is such an interesting choice for the end.
Yeah, I think they could have played the leg breaking to save her. I think that's another opportunity where they easily could have pushed back further on the like, I don't know that he saved her. Like they've been eating women for like the past 10 hours. Like, you know, but yeah, it is cool that that they end up in this state where like their final fight isn't necessarily at their best because they're doing such cool things. What do you think of the end of this movie?
I think it's very abrupt.
It's very abrupt. It's like more abrupt even
than Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Baragon was. Yeah.
Because I listened back to that episode because I like wasn't, because, they talk about, our Frankenstein died on Mount Fuji or whatever. And I was like, is that what happened?
It's well, it's so ambiguous of what the fuck they were talking about. Because like, is there Frankenstein Sanda, or is there Frankenstein from Frankenstein versus Baragon, and Sanda just died the same way? It's very confusing, and you just kind of have to just go with it.
I am choosing, based on what we have in the movie, to believe that these are just monsters that exist in the world that are being researched, and that Stuart and Akemi raised their own Frankenstein monster that is not Frankenstein from the first one. I think it makes the most sense that way.
That has to make sense. Yeah, that has to be what it is.
It does mean that we have no idea why they think theirs died on Mount Fuji, though, which is a bit of a problem.
But maybe theirs just died on Mount Fuji, and
yeah,
similarly to the first one.
Right?
Who knows?
But it's so abrupt. Like the first one, it's weird that both of these movies kind of have like what I think are pretty lackluster to disappointing endings.
I think that it's probably because they don't really know how to solve the problem of like a constantly regenerating monster. And I think, that original ending of just like they basically have to sacrifice all of Tokyo in order to destroy all their cells. It's a pretty hardcore ending. I think that would be pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
I'm sure that would have been a nightmare to film that, and they probably didn't do it partially because of budget and also because that is a very dark ending. But I think it would have been a more effective ending. I don't know that it would have like made sense for this movie though.
It could have if the only way they could pull it off is for Sanda to also go.
Right.
Like if even if Stuart convinced them not to attack Sanda further, and the movie ends with them only being able to pull it off because Sanda is holding Gaira in Tokyo.
Yeah.
I think you've got an effective movie there. I think it'll be
really effective. Yeah.
Especially since they're brothers,
Right. And
they're holding each other in Tokyo.
Exactly. I think that would be actually a pretty beautiful, devastating ending.
Yeah.
But as it stands, it's just like, I don't know, the military bombs the water enough that it causes an undersea volcano to rise up and erupt, and they die in that ?
Well,
like, it's really weird.
The question mark, I think, is what the ending is supposed to be. Do you know, like, is there any indication that they wanted to keep making Frankenstein movies? Because it leaves them open to make another Frankenstein movie, like, very easily.
Always the possibility,
because that was kind of my assumption, was like, I guess they just wanted to make another one, so they're not going to show them die.
Right. I think that would probably be the thing. Yeah.
It's weird that the movie ends basically ending with them mid-fight. I mean, I know it's not technically, but they didn't finish their fight.
It's a very period ending.
Yeah.
So like, I guess the movie's over.
Yeah. I do think the weakest parts of this movie are that big 10-minute stretch of like nothing moving and the ending being what it is. Yeah. I think I'm so curious to see what this 1970 cut is. because I wonder.
I don't think it's that much different though
Damn.
in terms of the problems that you're looking for.
That's a bummer.
I think it's a lot of the human stuff that is different.
Yeah.
From at least from what I didn't watch that cut, but I did watch like a YouTube compilation that was just about the changes.
Gotcha.
And I think a lot of it's just like alternate takes from the same scenes we've seen, or like a couple of additional human things, but like the monster stuff is the same. I think,
and I understand why they wouldn't necessarily want to get rid of the monster stuff. That's like a lot of what draws people in, but that's such an opportunity they had to like tighten this movie up.
Yeah.
But they probably didn't think they needed to tighten it up. They probably would disagree with me, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. Mixed feelings on this one.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed in it, I think. Like I said, I understand the appeal, especially from like if you watch this as a kid, but I didn't. So I'm holding it up against other Toho kaiju movies that I have seen, and it didn't really do it for me. But again, I do think the broad strokes idea of the sort of sibling rivalry story between two kaiju is a really fun concept. And that scene with Sanda, like having to like make the call that he needs to kill his brother, is incredibly good. I really, really, really love that scene. Like that scene alone, like on its own, maybe is like among one of my favorite things that we've seen from this podcast potentially. I just wish the movie around it had like the emotional power as that one scene does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I ultimately like it because I think of what it is trying to do and makes progress on doing, even if it doesn't reach where I think it should end up going. And I do think I think it's a fun one to think about. I think this is a fun world to think about. Sure. I think they're fun monsters to think about. I think the uniqueness of what they are and how they transformed the lore for this one makes it way more interesting to think about than the original Frankenstein monster was. Mm-hmm. And like, this is a movie, I think I'll continue to think more about it and appreciate it even more, even if I don't necessarily think it's better as a result of thinking about it. I think I think my affinity will just continue to grow for it as I keep thinking about it.
Very cool. Yeah, this is a really interesting one to talk about.
Also doesn't hurt, Derek.
Okay.
That I had to spend time, but I didn't have to. I agreed to spend time looking at these monsters a whole lot because I did the art.
Yeah.
So in having to sort of figure out how to make them appealing to myself because I was drawing them. I'm
fair.
Sure that doesn't hurt. There's like a level of investment there that I probably have a bias, built in for now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Check out Doug's art on podcast apps or glitterjaw.com or our social media if you haven't seen it. I haven't seen the finished product yet, but what I have seen of it looks really fucking fun as hell. And you make these dudes look good.
I ended up thank you. That's a massive compliment because they're ugly. But it was a lot more fun. It's sort of like the movie itself. It was a lot more fun than I expected it to be. I was like you saw me when we were talking about it. I was like not eager to draw these guys at all. I was convinced because I knew there was an octopus in this, and the octopus is like barely in the artwork. So
I love it.
They ended up being fun. Plus the reference is stupid. And if people know what it is, please tweet it at me or please post it at me.
Yeah, I would love for people to figure that out because it's a really fun reference. Yeah. We don't often get a chance to talk about when one of us are doing the art for the episode because it's usually like we're recording it way earlier than we've actually finished that art yet and haven't shared it with each other
and then
yet.
Just kind of do our own thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the timing has actually worked out where like I've actually seen what you've done and you've done a lot of progress on it. So that's exciting. I'm really excited for people to see that art for it. Predictions.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any theories as to why we watch this movie right now?
There is the only theory that I think I can possibly have is that I do know that there are movies that are big collections of monsters. And I have to assume, because I have nothing else to go on, I have to assume that we watched this for the same reason we watched Frankenstein versus Baragon. And I imagine that the Gargantuas or a Gargantua or something that is like them, if not literally Gaira and Sanda or one of the two of them, I imagine one of these suits appears in a movie with a bunch of other monsters.
Sure.
It's the only theory that could possibly make sense. I don't think there's a sequel to this. I don't think they ever meet Godzilla on their own. So I don't. It has to be it. I know we haven't watched them, but I know that there are these movies that have lots of monsters. So
cool. Yeah, that's the only question I had, because my other question would have been, do you think we'll see Sanda or Gaira again? Actually, no. You know what? I'll amend that. Do you, if you're correct, and we're going to see a Gargantua or Gargantuas plural again, do you think that it will be both Sanda and Gaira, or just one or the other? And if so, which?
Ooh, well, see, this is tough because I don't know how those movies end up being, right? Like, I've seen movies with lots of monsters, but I've seen movies with maybe 4 monsters max.
Sure.
And there's usually like clear sides. I mean, GMK makes it so clear. It's like 3 monsters versus a big terrifying monster, you know?
Right.
I have no idea how the big collection ones work. And so I don't know if it would make more sense for them to bring the scary villain one over, or if it would make sense to bring the like nice ally over, but I could see either one of those being the case. If it's like a bunch of monsters versus a bunch of monsters, you could bring them both. If it's one good monster versus a bunch of bad monsters, then it's got to be Gaira.
Gaira on like the Legion of Doom, like he's like part of evil. He's like the evil henchman.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's funny. That's really funny.
So I know that didn't directly answer your question, but I think
that's great. That's a great answer, though.
Yeah,
it's a great answer. Yeah. Cool. Well, the next movie we are doing is on May 27th. So that's in a couple weeks. We're doing Godzilla against Mechagodzilla from 2002. So this is the Millennium Era, which, as you said, these are the anthology ones. So this is just going to be its own continuity.
What was the last Millennium one we watched? Would that have been
That wasn't GMK, was it? That feels like forever
might have
ago.
been, but it might have been. I don't know.
Jesus, that was such a long time ago.
But I'm excited to be back in the Millennium.
Yeah, I think it was GMK. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, because you know what? Because the slot that we normally would have had a Millennium movie in, it was replaced with Godzilla 98. That's what it was.
Oh, that makes sense.
That's why it feels like it's been such an incredibly long time. Yeah.
Okay.
So how do you think that Mechagodzilla is going to like sort of be played in the Millennium Era, or like differ from what you've already seen in the Heisei era?
Well,
do you have any expectation?
What's interesting is like the Mechagodzilla I've met, the one Mechagodzilla I've met is built upon the skeleton, the remains of another movie or another monster. With this being an anthology, obviously there isn't like a King Mechagodzilla, Mecha King Ghidorah. Good God, I hate that name so much. Mecha King Ghidorah. That there isn't one of those to build up a Mechagodzilla. So I have to, the Millennium is so hard because if it's a villain,
free for all, anything can happen.
If it's a villain Godzilla, then the prediction is like, yeah, we make our own Godzilla. But because it's an anthology movie, like, how do you get to the point where the first story you're telling is we made our own Godzilla? Like, that seems crazy. So yeah, I have no idea. I'll tell you what I want, because this wasn't what the first Mechagodzilla movie we watched was. I really want them to lean heavily into the hubris of creating a fucking Godzilla. I think it's so wild for humans to create a Mechagodzilla. You know what? Fuck that. It's from space. It's aliens. Aliens brought a Mechagodzilla. That's my prediction.
Cool. Okay. Well, do you expect any other kaiju other than Mechagodzilla and Godzilla?
I would expect there to be something. Maybe there's like a small something like early in the movie. You know how they have like the weird like mite things that were massive on the boat?
Oh yeah. Sure,
something akin to that, or like the weird little guys in Rodan. I don't think there's going to be like another big massive monster. I think the primary conflict will be Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla.
Cool. Those are the only questions that I have. I'm trying to think if there's any other good ones, but it's hard with the Millennium Era because there's like nothing to build upon really.
Anything could happen.
Yeah. I'm excited to revisit this one. What?
The aliens we've met before, I feel so confident we're going to see them again, and we haven't seen them yet. We've seen them one time, and they just feel like something that will appear again. So it's not just going to be aliens; it's going to be them. I'm going to be so specific about this prediction. The Zillions bring Mechagodzilla to Earth to steal Godzilla, or some bullshit like that.
Cool. I love the way your brain works. If you'd like to find other queer creators who talk about media, check out the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective at glitterjaw.com and follow us on Blue Sky at Glitterjaw and Instagram at GlitterjawPods. But Doug, if people want to find you and all the Glitterjaw things you're working on, where can they do that?
You can find me all over the place at Ikkybooley, ICKYBOOLEY. You can listen to me and Derek weekly on Walloping Web Snappers, which is a Spider-Man cartoon deep dive podcast. You can also listen to us on a mini-series we just completed over on the Falling with Style feed. It's 5 episodes where we talked about non-Pixar movies and television, typically aimed at children and families that have clear, unafraid, and unambiguous queerness depicted in them. And you can also listen to me on a show called Novel Gaming, where my friend Katie and I catch up on all the books, video games, and sometimes other media we've been consuming lately. So you can find all that on my Blue Sky or at Glitterjaw.
You can find me most places at Derek B. Gale. My other podcasts, in addition to the ones that Doug mentioned that I'm on, are Gimmicks, where we look at high concept and experimental and structure breaking episodes of television, and also Lee Carvalho's Potting Challenge, where we look at Simpsons tie-in video games, as well as deep dives into pop culture history and Simpsons history and video game history. Check out our Patreon at patreon.com/wallopingwebsnappers. That's the name of the Spider-Man podcast that Doug and I do together, but that supports everything that we do together, including Skrionk. And we will often have bonus episodes related to Godzilla and Kaiju stuff on there. So if you want to hear more of us talking tokusatsu and Kaiju, there is more stuff there waiting for you on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. We do have a channel on our Discord as well for Skrionk, so there's a link to that in the show notes. You can email us any thoughts you might have to skrionkpodcast@gmail.com. Rate, review, and subscribe on our podcast platforms, and join us on May 27th for 2002's Godzilla against Mecha Godzilla.
Excited. Bye.
If my lips could only say the pretty words that I feel in my heart. If my voice could make the sound, I would tell you how I love you and we'd never be apart. But with just one look into your face, my mind starts to drift right into space, and the words get stuck in my throat. The words get stuck in my throat.